Yes, we are at stage 10, paragraph page 887.
Mm-hmm.
887, okay, and our last headword was astonish, newer type of lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That's
so,
right.
so let's
Mm-hmm.
start with revision. Ready?
Okay.
Okay, here we go. First question. Do
Mm-hmm.
you think that people who shoplift should be imprisoned? Do you think people who shoplift should be imprisoned? Yes or no?
Oh, yes.
I think that
I
people
think that
who
people
shoplift
who
should
shoplift
be imprisoned.
to be imprisoned.
Very good. Is there a cure for the common cold? Is there a cure for the common cold? No, there isn't
No,
a
there
cure
isn't a
for the
cure
common cold.
for the common cold.
Very good. Do you usually take a cold remedy to make you feel better when you have a cold? Do you usually take a cold remedy to make you feel better when you have a cold? Yes or no?
No,
I don't
I
usually
don't
take a
usually
cold
take
remedy
a cold
to
remedy
make me feel
to make
better
me feel
when
better
I have a
when
cold.
I have a cold.
Very good. What types of aircraft take off vertically? What type of aircraft take off vertically? Helicopters and
Helicopters
certain
and
special
certain
airplanes
special airplanes
take off vertically.
take off vertically.
Very good. Why do some people prefer to stay in woodwork rather than paint it? Why do some people prefer to stay in woodwork rather than paint it? Some people
Some people
prefer to stain
prefer to stay
woodwork rather
woodwork
than paint
rather
it
than paint it
because the woodwork
because the
looks
woodwork
more
looks
natural
more natural
in it is stained.
in it is if it is stained.
Very good. If you discovered an ink stain on an article of clothing, how would you try to remove it? If you
Mhm.
discovered an ink stain on an article of clothing, how would you try to remove it? If I discovered
If I
an ink
discovered
stain
an
on
instinct
an article
on
of
an
clothing,
article of
I
clothing,
try to remove
I
it.
try to remove it
By
by washing it.
very good. Okay, what does the word creep mean? What does the word creep mean? The word creep
The
means
word clip means
either to move
either
forward
to move
very
forward
slowly
very
or to
slowly
move
or
slowly
to move
and
slowly
quietly
and
so that
quietly
nobody
so
hears
that
you.
nobody here should.
Give me an example of each. Give me an example of each, please. The traffic was
The traffic
creeping along
was clipping
very
along
slowly,
very slowly
owing to the fact
owing to the
that
fact
several
that
roads
several
had
roads
been blocked
had been
by the
blocked
police.
by the police.
Elizabeth crept
Elizabeth crept
into the room
into the room
so as not to
so
wake
as not to
the
wake
baby.
the baby.
Very good. What does the word passage mean? What does the word passage mean? The word passage
The word
mean,
passage
one
mean
more, the word passage
the
can
word
mean
passage mean
a long, narrow
along
space,
narrow space,
generally between
generally
two
between
buildings
two
or
buildings,
inside a
or
building,
inside a
like
buildings,
a corridor.
like a
It can
corridor.
also mean
It can also
a short
mean
extract
a short
from a
extra
speech
from a
or a
speech
piece of
or
writing.
a piece of writing.
Very good. Okay, what am I pretending to do? What am I pretending to do? You're pretending
You are
to
pretending
steer a car.
steer a car.
And what do we call the thing I'm pretending to hold? And what do we call the thing I'm pretending to hold? We call the thing.
We call the
You're
thing
pretending to
you're
hold
pretending to
a
hold
steering wheel.
a steering wheel.
Very good. What does the word aside mean? What does the word aside mean? The word aside
The word
means
aside means
on one side
on one
or
side
to one side.
or to one side.
Very good. Do you put money aside each month to save for any special purpose? Do you put money aside each month to save for any special purpose? Yes or no?
Yes,
I put money
I
aside
put money
each month
aside each
to
month
save for
to
some
save
special
for
purpose.
some special purpose.
During an evening out with friends, would you have to take somebody aside from the rest of the group if you wanted to speak to them in private? During an evening out with friends, would you have to take somebody aside from the rest of the group if you wanted to speak to them in private? Yes.
Yes,
During an evening
during
out
an evening
with my friends.
with my
One
friends.
more. Yes.
Yes,
During an evening
growing
out
an evening out
with my friends,
with my
I'd
friends.
have to take
I'd have to
somebody
take
aside
somebody
from the rest
aside
of the group
from the rest of the group
if I wanted
if I
to
wanted
speak to them
to
in
speak to
private.
them in private.
Very good. Do naughty children or primary school always obey instructions that their teacher gives them? Do naughty children at primary school always obey instructions that their teacher gives them? No. Naughty
No,
children
naughty
at
children
primary
at
school
primary
don't
school
always
don't
obey
always obey
instructions that
instructions
their teachers
that
give
their
them.
teachers give
They
them.
sometimes
They
disobey
sometimes
them.
disobey them.
Very good. What do we have to stick on an envelope before we can post it? What do we have to stick on an envelope before we can post it? We have to stick
We have
a
to
stamp
stick and stamp
on an envelope
on an envelope
before we can post it.
before we can post it.
Very good. What do tailors use to fasten pieces of cloth together while they're sewing? What do tailors use to fasten pieces of cloth together while they're sewing? Tailors use
Tailors
pins
use spins
to fasten pieces
to fasten
of
pieces
cloth together
of cloth together
while they're sewing.
while they are sewing.
Very good. How do we stick notices on a notice board? How do we stick notices on a notice board? We stick
We
notices
stick
on a
notices
notice board
on a notice
by
board
using a
by
drawing
using
pin.
a drawing pin.
Very good. What are the three forms of stick? What are the three forms of stick? The three forms
The three
of
forms
stick
of
are
stick
stick, stuck,
are
stuck.
stick, stuck, stuck.
What do we mean when we say that somebody sticks to a plan? What do we mean when we say that somebody sticks to a plan? When we say
When we
that
say
somebody
that
sticks
somebody
to a plan,
sticks to a
we
plan,
mean that
we mean that
they refuse
they
to change
refuse
their
to
plans
change their plans
even when the
even
situation
when the
is
situation
difficult
is
or
difficult
there is
or
opposition
there is opposition
to their ideas.
to their ideas.
Very good. Okay. Are the police allowed to follow a criminal across the borders of their own country into another country? Are the police allowed to follow a criminal across the borders of their own country into another country? No. The
No,
police aren't
the police
allowed
aren't
to
allowed
follow a
to
criminal
follow a criminal
across the borders
across the
of their
borders
own country
of their own
into
countries
another country.
into another country.
And which countries does your country share a border with? Which countries does your country share a border with? My country
My
doesn't
country
share
doesn't
a
share
border with
a
any
border
country.
with any country.
Very good. What do we generally find along the borders of a field? What do we generally find along the borders of a field? We generally find
We generally
a
find
hedge
a
or
hedge
a fence
or a fence
along the borders
along the
of a
borders
field.
of a field.
Very good. Do you prefer plain clothes or clothes with patterns on them? Do you prefer plain clothes or clothes with patterns on them? I prefer
I prefer plain clothes
than clothes
than
with
clothes
patterns
with
on
a
them.
pattern of them.
Very good. Who do you think should be more responsible for setting the correct patterns of behavior for children, parents or teachers? Who do you think should be more responsible for setting the correct patterns of behavior for children, parents or
Mhm,
teachers? I think
mhm. I think parents
should be more
should be
responsible
more
than
responsible
teachers
than
for
teachers
setting the correct
or setting a
patterns
correct patterns
of behavior for
of
children.
behavior of for children.
Very good. Do some people get into financial difficulties through spending too much on their credit cards? Do some people get into financial difficulties through spending too much on their credit cards? Yes, some
Yes,
people
some
get
people
into
get
financial
into
difficulties
financial
through
difficulties
spending too
through
much
spending too
on
much
their credit
on
cards.
their credit card.
Very good. Okay, next, what am I doing? What am I doing? You're weaving
You are
the first
weaving
finger
the first
of your
finger
right hand
of your right hand
over and under
over
the
and under
fingers
the
of
fingers
your left hand.
of your left hand.
Very good. What are the three forms of weave? What are the three forms of weave? The three
The
forms
three
of weave
forms of
are weave,
weave are
wove,
weave,
woven.
wove, woven.
Very good. Okay, what kind of things can we make by weaving? What kind of things can we make by weaving? We can make cloth,
We can make clothes,
baskets,
baskets,
etc. by weaving.
etc. by weaving.
Very good. Are there any parts of your country that have been ruined by tourism? Are there any parts of your country that had been ruined by tourism? Yes or no?
Oh, yes,
There are some
there are
parts
some
of
parts
my
of
country
my country
that have been ruined
that have been
by
ruined
tourism.
by tourism.
Are there any old ruins in your hometown? Are there any old ruins in your hometown? Yes or no?
Yes,
There are some
there are
old ruins
some more old drawing
in my hometown.
on my in my
One
hometown.
more. Yes, there are
Yes,
some
there
old
are some
ruins
old
in
ruins
my
in my
hometown.
hometown.
Very good. What are they? What are they? They're the ruins
They
of.
are the ruins of old schools.
Very good. Okay. What am I doing? What am I doing? You're whispering.
You are whispering.
Why do people whisper? Why do people whisper? People whisper
People whispered
because they don't
because
want
they
others
don't want to
to
others
hear what
to
they're
hear
saying.
what they are saying.
Brigid, how do you prefer to see a living room lit with overhead lights or with lamps? How do you prefer to see a living room lit with overhead lights or with lamps? I
Mhm.
prefer
I
to
prefer
see a
to
living
see
room
a
lit
living
with
room lit with overhead lights.
lights. Very good. Do most people in your area keep their cars in garages or leave them in the street? Do most people in your area keep their cars in garages or leave them in the street? Most
Mhm.
people
Most
in my
people
area
in my area
keep their
in garage
cars
keep their
in
cars in
garages. Garages. Very good.
garages,
Garage.
garage,
Very good. Garages.
garages. Thank you.
Very good. Okay. If you suddenly do a lot of physical exercise after a long period of not having done any exercise at all, do your muscle feel stiff the next day? If you suddenly do a lot of physical exercise after a long period of not having done any exercise at all, do your muscle feel stiff the next day? Yes.
Mhm.
If I
Yes,
suddenly
if I
do
suddenly
a lot
do
of
a lot
physical
of
exercise
physical
after
exercise
a long period
after a long
of not
period
having
of
done
not having
any
done
exercise at
any
all,
exercise at
my
all,
muscle feels stiff
my muscles
the
feel
next
stiff
day.
the next day.
Very good. What is a cereal box usually made of? What is a cereal box usually made of? A cereal box
A
is
cereal box
usually made
is
of
usually
cardboard.
made of cardboard.
Very good. Would you be astonished if one of your family members walk into the room right now? Would you be astonished if one of your family members walk into the room right now?
Mhm.
Yes or no?
No,
I wouldn't be
I
astonished
wouldn't be
if
astonished
one of my
if I
family
want my
members
family members
walk into the room
walk
right
into
now.
the room right now.
That's correct because you're at home. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the end of our revision. Let's have new
Hmm.
work.
Hmm.
Okay, to repeat, refusal.
Refusal.
Very good. Okay, listen, refusal is a noun of the verb to
Hmm.
refuse. For
Hmm.
example, her refusal to help me made me sad.
Hmm.
Okay, very good. So let's practice. What's the noun of the verb to refuse? What's the noun of the verb to refuse? The noun
The
of the
noun
verb to
of the
refuse
verb to refuse
is refusal.
is refusal.
Very good. Give me an example. Give me an example, please. Her refusal
Her
to
refusal
listen to other
to listen
people's
to other
opinions
people's opinions
means that she
means
will
that
never be,
you'll
huh?
never be,
She will never
she
be
will never
a
be
good manager.
a good manager.
Very good. Okay. Next, repeat bound.
Bound,
Out of bounds.
out of bound,
Boundary.
boundary,
Boundary. Very good. Okay.
boundary. Mm,
Listen, bound is a verb.
mm.
It means to set a limit of something or to form a border around an area. For
Mhm,
example, the prison yard is bounded on all sides by a high wall.
mhm,
My house and my neighbor's house are bounded by a line or a wall. The
mhm,
town is bounded by mountains. Okay.
mm,
If an area is out of bounds, it means nobody is allowed to enter the area, like off
mhm,
limits, out of bounds. For example, a sign on the door says out of bounds. It means nobody
mm,
is allowed to enter the area beyond the door.
mhm,
Boundary is a noun that means border. For example,
mhm,
the boundary between my house and my neighbor's house is a wall.
mhm,
One generally puts a hedge or a fence as a boundary of one's property, one's land.
mm.
Let's practice. Is England bounded on all sides by the sea? Is England bounded on all sides by the sea? No. England
No,
isn't
England
bounded
isn't
on
bounded
all sides
on all the
by the
sides
sea.
by the
It
sea.
shares
It
borders
shares borders
with Scotland
with
and
Scotland
Wales.
and Wales.
Very good. What does a sign on a door saying out of bounds mean? What does a
Mhm.
sign on a door saying out of bounds mean? A sign on a
A
door
sign on a door
saying out of bounds
saying out of
means
bounds
that
means that
nobody is allowed
nobody is
to
allowed
enter the area
to enter the area
beyond the door.
beyond the door.
Very good. How does one generally mark the boundary of one's property? How does one generally mark the boundary of one's property? One generally
One generally
marks the boundary
marks the
of
boundary
one's
of
property
one's
with a
property
wall,
with a wall,
fence,
fence,
hedge, etc.
fence, etc.
Very good. Next, repeat. B.
B.
Wasp.
Wasp.
Sting, stung, stung.
Sting, stung, stung.
Sensation.
Sensation.
Flap,
Grab.
flap. Very good. Okay, listen. Bee. A bee is a noun. It
Mm-hmm.
is an insect with a black and yellow
Mm-hmm.
colors. It
Mm-hmm.
flies and loves honey. It makes honey.
Mm-hmm.
A wasp
Mm-hmm.
is an insect with black and yellow colors too. It also
Mm-hmm.
flies like a bee. Sting is a
Mm-hmm.
verb which means to hurt someone by piercing the skin with a sharp pointed part that usually contains poison. The three forms of the verb sting are sting, stung, stung. For
Mm-hmm.
example, when a bee stings, it really hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Sensation is a noun, which means a feeling or the effect that a body experiences. For example,
Mm-hmm.
if you were stung by a bee, you would get a stinging sensation.
Mm-hmm.
Slap is a verb. It is to hit using the back or front of a hand. For example,
Mm-hmm.
when I broke up with my girlfriend because of another girl, he slapped
Mm-hmm.
me. Oh, she slapped me very
Oh, slap.
Let's practice. What's a
Mm-hmm.
wasp likely to do if it lands on you while you're sunbathing and you disturb it? What's a
Mm-hmm.
wasp likely to do if it lands on you while you were sunbathing and you disturb it? If a
Mm-hmm.
wasp
If a wasp
lands on you
lands upon
while
you
you're sunbathing,
while sunbathing,
while you're
while
sunbathing
you are
and
sunbathing,
you disturb it,
and you disturb it,
it's likely to sting
it's
you.
likely to sting you.
Which do you think is more painful to be stung by, a bee or a wasp? Which do you think is
Mhm.
more painful to be stung by, a bee or a wasp? I think
Mm. I
it's
think
more painful
it's more
to be
painful
stung by
to
a
be stung by a wasp.
wasp. From what else do we get the stinging sensation? From what else do we get the stinging sensation? We get
Mhm.
a
We
stinging
get a
sensation
stinging
when
sensation
we are slapped
when we are
by
slapped
someone,
by someone,
when we clean a wound,
when we clean a wound,
etc.
etc.
Very good. Next, repeat curl.
Curl.
Very good. Okay, listen. Curl can be used as a noun and a verb.
Mm-hmm.
As a noun, a curl is something that has the shape of a ring. For example, a piece
Mm.
of hair that forms a ring shape is a curl.
Oh.
As a verb, it means to form a round shape or twist into a curved shape. For example,
Mm.
cats curl up when they sleep to prevent their heat from their bodies escaping.
Mm-hmm.
Let's practice. What do we call a piece of hair that forms the shape of a ring? What do we call a piece of hair that forms the shape of a ring? We
Mm-hmm.
call a
We
piece of
call a
hair
piece of
that
hair that
forms
forms
the shape of a
the
ring
shape of a
a
ring,
curl.
a curl.
The smoke curl upwards when there's a strong wind. Does smoke curl upwards when there's a strong wind? No.
Mm.
Smoke
No,
doesn't curl
smoke doesn't
upwards
curl upwards
when there's a strong
when
wind.
there's a strong wind.
It gets blown
It
away.
gets blown away.
Why do cats and dogs often curl up when they sleep? Why do cats and dogs often curl up when they sleep? Cats and
Mhm.
dogs
Cats and dogs
often curl up
often curl
when
up
they sleep
when they sleep
because
because
it prevents
it
the
prevents
heat from their
the
bodies
heat from their bodies
escaping.
from escaping.
Very good. Okay, so now let's move on to our reading.
Mhm.
Very good. So our reading is at stage 7, paragraph page 599. Last
Mhm.
headword was regards. Okay, please start at stage 7, page 600. Okay,
600.
600, and start with
Uh-huh.
headword reference with reference to.
Okay. Oh, reference with reference to. What is a reference library? A reference library is a library where we are allowed to read the books, but we are not allowed to borrow them and take them home.